And she teaches math, and she's probably one of the most amazing math teachers I've ever met. And so, can I tell your story, Lauren, or do you want me not to?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. She really is good. Like, I go in her class, I learn stuff. She's very smart, and she knows how to teach it where the kids get it, right? Because if I get it, I know the kids have gotten it because I haven't been in math in like 3 million years, and it's algebra. So who needs that in life? Just kidding. So anyway, Dr. Ellis didn't want Lauren to not feel supported. So he had me go by and say hi and introduce myself. And I sat in her class and I was just amazed. I was like, wow, this girl's really good. And she is. So anyway, that's my story about Lauren. And it's a good story.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Okay, she's not talking. Okay, so we're going to get started. As you know, Lauren, I'm Ardell Hamilton, the one-to-one coach at Naaman Forest High School. And today my moderator is going to be Ashley Jackson, the one-to-one instructional coach at North Garland. Ashley, do you want to say something?
Nothing, but hey, I always like the person that can make math fun because I do not like it.
Well, then you need to go to her class, see? And you'll love it. You will, because I'm like, so that's how you do that. Oh my gosh, because she breaks it down and she explains it really well. She's a very good teacher. And she's techie. So she's very technology rich. In fact, she got in trouble with that, but we won't talk about that. Because she's way too techie.
Yeah, sometimes I use too much technology.
Sometimes you tend to use it for evil and not for good.
For evil.
Okay. So anyway, we're doing the how to create interactive presentations using Google Forms. So if you'll mute your mic, we're starting right now. The link to this presentation, Ashley will post throughout the chat as we go along. So if you want the presentation, it's at the second link at the bottom. And Ashley printed it. You were so good, Ashley. And then the sign in, please sign in so we know you're here. All one of you. Two of you. Okay. So the objective is to create an interactive lesson built-in student checks for understanding, utilizing resources that you already have. So it's not necessarily that you're going to reinvent the wheel. You're just going to put it all in a form, and the form is going to be the lesson. So basically, let's get started. Interactive Google Forms promote engagement, differentiation, student-centered learning, the 4 C's, which was huge in this district like last year. Now I rarely hear about them. And it's collaboration, creativity, communication, and critical thinking. And also a Google form is a great way to get immediate feedback so that you can do the reteaches and everything else that you need to do with the new understanding of what your kids are getting and what they're not getting. So this is why you would use a Google form to be the lesson. Plus they're just fun. It's an intricate thing to create on your own, but the kids like them. So when you're creating an interactive presentation, there's some things you need to consider. First and foremost is, what do the students need to learn? That's the learner goal. And usually since you've been doing this, you will automatically know where you are and what the kids need to have. Can the students navigate this independently? You don't want to make it too challenging where they just give up because it's too much of a struggle to navigate. What resources will keep them most engaged? So you don't, if it's boring to you, it's probably boring to them. There's ways to spice it up, but mostly keep it engaging. Can my ELLs and SPED students work all by themselves on this? So can they work self-directed? Will they be able to complete it? Will there be language issues? Can I modify it and for them? How can I drive this lesson utilizing essential questions? And how many checks for understanding are too many? So let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so when you're creating a Google form that eventually becomes your whole lesson, some tips for success so that you're not working as hard as you would think you had to. First of all, collect all your resources and put them in a folder in your Google Drive, because that's where you're probably going to get them. Then start your presentation with a driving question and end that presentation with a driving question that's phrased a little bit differently. Use different tools of engagement. You can use videos, PowerPoints, images, readings, interactives, gallery walks, task cards, whatever your little heart desires. I came up with like 4 things that we're going to put in one today, 4 things that I'm going to put in one today as this example. Map out a plan. It's always great to start with an engagement piece, go into the explore, explain, and then have them work to apply it to the lesson, just like you would a regular lesson. All the resources I get used today to create this Google form, I got from the remote learning curriculum. So moving on. So when I say put everything in a Google folder in your Google Drive, that's exactly what I did. And so this window, I clicked on that resource and it takes you to this resources folder. And so I went through to the remote learning website, and all the curriculum that was in the remote learning website that they're supposed to be 8th grade science, because that's where me and Ashley came from. All the curriculum that they're supposed to be working on this week and last week was in there. So I just went through it real quick and I downloaded it a couple of things that I thought might be interesting to create a Google form. And that's how I came up with my plan. That's basically it. They had already mapped it out. I just am using their materials. Okay. So enough talking about it. Let's get started. So basically the goal is to create a Google form that is actually your whole lesson cycle with checkpoints and everything for your kiddos. Okay. So with that in mind, if you go to forms.new, you can work on one yourself, or you can just watch and type along with me, or you can just I put a sample in there at the end so you can utilize the sample, but also there's also going to be a recording of this and the presentation. So anyway, so when you're starting a Google form, when you go to forms.new, this is basically the form you get. I always try to title it for my kids so that they can tell it from the other forms. So this one, I'm going to go slow so you can keep up. This one I'm going to title is a sample lesson, and we're going to call it physics. Uh-oh, what's going on, Lauren? Can you not access it? Let me see. Sorry.
I can't access the sample one, but I do have a form pulled up.
Okay, I'm opening its sharing settings.
Okay,
right now.
thank you.
Sorry, I apologize. Let me open the sharing settings on it all together. My bad. I thought it was supposed to make a copy. Did it not make a copy for you, Lauren?
It made one now.
Okay.
Now that I have access.
Sorry about that. Okay. Let me get rid of that one so I don't get all confused. Okay, so this is just the sample, and we're going to call it Physics is Fun. That's my favorite thing to call physics. So sometimes I add a description. I don't necessarily need to because we're just doing a sample lesson. So whenever you're creating a form, the first thing we ask the kids, and I always separate these out, I start with their last name, and that automatically populates the short answer. I don't hit the requireds so that I can keep it previewed. So whenever I'm creating a form, I just do all the required stuff at the end, hit my requireds, put in my answer key, that kind of stuff at the end. So, and then we'll go with first name. And I know my keyboard types loud. I've heard that before. I always ask for an ID because sometimes my kids have the same name. So, and I've had that happen a lot. And then I do my class periods. It just helps me sort. Oopsie, if I could spell, that would help. It just helps me sort my information if I have to sort it. So to keep this brief, I'm just going to put 1A1, A2, A3, and A4. Oopsie, my bad. And we're going to change this one to a drop down. It just makes it prettier for the kids. Like I said, I'm not going to make anything required yet so that I can preview it as I go along so I don't get, so that I can make sure my links work and anything else I decide to put in here. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just add a real quick basic question. Remember when I said that you start with the driving question? Well, this is that driving question. So I took this driving question when I was gathering up my resources. I noticed that, and I made this resource page, that in the resources that our district had, they had a driving question. Amazing. And I just took that driving question from the resources. So I'm going to copy this off of here and paste it into the form. So that's the initial question to get the kids thinking, to get them started. And like I said, I don't hit any of the requireds yet. So the next thing that I'm going to do to make my lesson complete, I add sections. So we started with a driving question. I'm going to go ahead and add a section here. So this next section, if you notice, I have made this plan. It took me like maybe 10 minutes to download all these resources. So I made this plan here, and my Engage activity was a FET activity that they had, which was also their Engage activity in the resources. So I'm going to go ahead and add this to my project. So I'm going to title it FET Activity Engage. Okay. So basically, this FET Activity Engage, I'm going to give a description of it to the kids. I'm going to give them a little bit of direction. So I'm going to add a description down here. So basically what I'm going to do is every section is going to be the explore. It's going to start with the engage, and then we're going to move to the next section, which is going to be the explore, explain. And then finally, they're going to do an evaluate, another explore activity, and then an evaluate activity where they actually apply what they learned. Okay, so that's the map that I came up with. You can map it out any way you want. You got to do this anyway. I know this is a little bit of work, but then it's the whole lesson for the kids. So I'm going to say, please use this active activity to complete this section. Okay, and then I'll also probably tell them that feel free to play around. Did I spell that wrong? Yeah, I did. Around with this tool. So any directions or anything that I want them to see, I'm going to put them up here so that they actually see them. Then I'm going to go back to my resources because I also have a link in those resources. So I'm going to go back to my resources, and I'm going to, click on this and copy this link. So when I'm doing that, I'm going to go ahead and put this link in my form. So it's right there at the top for the kids. Now, in this version, you see that it doesn't become hot, but that's why I said don't necessarily put your requireds in because it makes it difficult. So as I go along, I'm going to hit the preview to make sure that it's coming along the way I want it to come along. So you go ahead, you put your links. Everything so far is right. My drop down has my classes. I'm good. But this way, because I didn't make my requireds, I can go to the next page and there's that link, and it's an active link. So when you preview it, it looks different than when it did in the beginning. So I can leave that up there because I'll probably come back to the preview, or I can close it out. It doesn't matter. So back to the lesson. So now I've done that part, but I've also noticed that when I was looking through it, there was a worksheet that had questions on it and had directions on it. So because this is just the engage and I want it to be short, like I said, the key is not to overwhelm the kids. The key is just to give them enough that they're interested. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this information since I already put it on here. I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to paste it into the form, but I'm going to paste it as just text and title. So I'm going to title this so that the kids can see it as activity directions. Okay, so these buttons over here kind of drive what you're going to do. I know Ashley went over forms yesterday, and a lot of people know the basics of forms. But if I want to add a question, it's the plus. If I want to import a question, which you can do that also, it's this one. If I just want to add a title and description, it's that one. An image is the picture. Video, you can add that YouTube video, and then to add a section, it's the equal sign. I went to Ashley's webinar yesterday, and that's what she was covering. So I've already copied. Oops, sorry, my computer loves me. I already copied this, and now I'm going to paste it in. I think I need a mouse on this computer, but I'm too cheap to buy it. Okay, so this is step one. I'm just going to make it as simple for the kids as possible, because remember, this is self-directed for them. Let me move this up a little bit. Okay, so you're not going to be there necessarily to hold their hands, so they know they're doing steps with this. So I'm going to try to make it as easy to follow as possible for the kids. Okay, so I put the steps in. Now I'm ready to go on to the next part of this, which would be questions. So they're going to work the activity, because that's what it says up there. They're going to play with the interactive. They're going to do these directions, and then I'm going to put checkpoints to see if they're gaining an understanding. So once again, it was already done for me. Usually it's not this easy, and sometimes you have to create the stuff yourself, but the district has done a really good job, Melissa, Luna, and them, of actually putting content in the science. That's actually very good. So this first one says, what happens to the speed of the skateboard refrigerator when the balance is, well, they'll be able to see that in simulations. So I'm going to copy that and paste it in. So I'm not necessarily going to give my copies numbers just because, but right now it's just to keep it simple. So that's a question that they're going to answer in a short answer. Okay, and like I said, I'm not messing with the requireds on these questions. The next one I'm going to go get, which came from all the resources, are the forces acting on the skateboard / refrigerator balanced or imbalanced? And from what they do in that activity, they should be able to answer that if they did the activity. This is the checkpoints that I'm talking about. So I'm going to add another question, but this time, and it does make a difference, I'm going to make this one a multiple choice question, and I'm going to give them options: balanced, and then I'm going to give them an unbalanced option. That's at the end. I'll tell you why I did some of the questions a different way. Well, I'll tell you now. Since the reason you might want to do that is like these questions right here. If you notice, because we've done this, if it's a short answer question, no matter what happens, you probably can't get, no matter what answer they put in. If you score it, if you make this form a quiz and you go to score it, then they'll get it wrong regardless. However, if you make it a multiple choice question, it's a right or wrong thing. So that way we'll have some multiple choice, we'll have some short answer. So when I go to use this form to collect the grades and to see if the students are actually getting the material, I can see from the multiple choice questions, and then I can go and eyeball on the response sheet of the form. I can go eyeball and see if they're getting the short answers without penalizing the kids by taking away points, even if they get the answer right. So usually I have some questions that are for credit, and then some questions that are just there that you're not going to get credit for anyway, and that way they don't feel ripped off. Because I've done that. I've gone into sessions where I paid a lot of attention, and so you don't have to score every question, basically, is what I'm trying to say. I guess I went the long way of saying that. So then I'm going to go. I know I have one more question. It's one side. So I'm going to go and get my final question. It says, will the speed of the skateboard / refrigerator ever stop changing? So I can ask this as a question. So I'm just going to copy, paste, hit the plus sign to add another question. And this is all in the section that's just the engage. So I'm going to add that in there. This one, they give me options. I'm going to add all those options because maybe it's not the answer. So I want to give the kids choices. That makes it easy. Okay. And finally, I do want some explanations. I do want to see what your thinking is. And so I'm going to go ahead and click this last one and make that a copy too. A question too, but it's going to be one of those questions that's probably not for credit. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. So far I have 2 questions I know that I can get a grade off this sheet. So I'm going to calculate in my head the question points. So now I'm basically done with that section. Okay. So now I'm going to go back to my plan and back to my resources. So in my resources right here, it says my apply is going to be my Edpuzzle. And then I'll look in my resources and I realize that I also wanted to do Cornell notes. And I have a PowerPoint that they can use to do the Cornell notes on. So my next section, which is going to be the explain part, I'm going to go ahead and click the equal button to add another section. And that's going to be my explain. And I'm going to title this one Cornell Notes Explain. Now, mind you, I'm still just going with materials that I got from the district. Yeah, I spelled that wrong. I just go with materials that I got from the district. So I'm just going to utilize the materials that I have. So I'm going to put a little description here. So please use this Cornell note form to take notes over the PowerPoint slides. Now at this point, I'm gonna go to this document. I'm gonna go to my resources and I'm gonna click on this document because the kids are gonna use this. And I want it to make a copy for every kid because I don't want them all typing on the same copy. So I'm going to take the edit part off and add copy here. And then I'm going to pull this link so it'll force them to make a copy. And I'm just going to add that into my little short directions that's meant to get their attention. Now I need to make sure that this looks the way I want it to look. So I'm going to go back to my preview. Make sure that link actually works. Okay. So far, my questions look good. My link is lit. And there's my link right there. So I always go through and preview it rather than do all the work. And then it doesn't look like I need it to look. So at this point, I'm going to go back to my resources because I know I have a PowerPoint in there. And so this is the PowerPoint that I want the kids to use. Now I can do the same thing and add the link and have them do all of the PowerPoint, or I can pick and choose slides and use those as images that the kids can focus their attention on. So they may not need all of this information. So should have already gone through my slides. And the district, like I said, the science team in this district is rocking it because they've already accounted for the fact that some of our kids need a little extra help. So you notice on this PowerPoint, they made the red information, the stuff the kids need to see. And so it'll help with their Cornell note-taking process. The first slide is a slide that tells them what they need to do. So I'm going to use that slide. So I know I'm going to use that slide. So basically to get a single slide that you can load into your form, I'm going to go right here to File. I'm going to download it, and I'm going to download it as a JPEG image. So once I do that, I'm going to pick a couple of other slides that I'm going to use in this. Let's go with this one. I'm going to do the same thing, File, Download as a JPEG, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pick this slide, do the same thing. I'm just doing them all at once. You can do them one at a time, but the process is pretty simple. So, and then I'm going to do another one, and then I'm going to pretend like they don't need the rest of the information. I mean, you can have a choice. You can either do it by the images. If you do it by the images, this will help your SPED kids, your ELL kids, and that way they're not going through an overwhelming PowerPoint, having to read off of every slide. So, so then I'm going to go back to my form that I've made. So I'm going to go back to the form that I've created, and this is where I'm just going to add this image. So I'm going to start with my first image, and right here, the little mountaintop tells me to add an image. So I'm going to add an image. Of course, I just downloaded them, so they should be in my downloads. And there they are. I'm going to start with the first one, which will be 7, or the earliest one, and I'm just going to upload it. And as you see, it's right there. And so I can actually give this slide a title for the kids, and I'm going to call it directions. Oopsie. Slide. So they have that. Then I'm going to add another image because I'm adding the slides one by one because I'm not going to use them all. And it's going to hit my downloads again. And I'm going to go from this one, which is number 8. And so the next one will load. And then I'm going to add another one. You can add as many as you want. By doing it this way, it helps capture the kids' attention. So that's the whole point, is to make this interactive presentation engaging. So by adding the slides one by one, that's what it does. And then, so there's that one. And then I'm going to just add one more for good measure. And I'm just doing this really quickly, just so for the training purposes. And so then, so I may go back and add more slides. I'm going to put some titles on slides just to help my kids out. So this will be slide 1, and I can say force or something like that. Anything you add will help the kids, and sometimes they read it, sometimes they don't, but it'll help your kiddos along. And the whole point is that this is for the kids. So slide 3. Now at this point, I want to make sure they're taking Cornell notes, and I know they are, and they're doing it on this document because that was part of the description. So at this point, I also need to add in here that when they get done with their Cornell notes, we're going to load those into the classroom too. I almost forgot to do this. So when you get done, you're going to add your completed Cornell notes to the assignment in Google Classroom. That way you can see if they've actually done them or not. So anyway, so we've done that. And at this point, it's a good point for a checkpoint to get their mind focused off of just reading and writing down notes. So basically at this point, I'm going to just make up a question to ask based on the information of the slides. Sometimes you get these PowerPoints and they have built-in questions, but I'm just going to make up one real quick. And I'm going to say, basically, what is, which one is not a characteristic of a force? Sorry about my Grammarly. I need it because I can't spell. Okay. And so then I'm just going to give them multiple choice options. I also, let's see, they're quick to say a push, a pull. So, because that's the first thing they're going to say. Then I'll add something random. But here again, you have a checkpoint. Questions don't have to be that basic. You have a checkpoint that you can work with your kiddos, and that will help them out with an understanding. So this is another thing, and then it's a break between the slides, and then you can go ahead and add the rest of the slides, or you can add another question. Now I did in my resources, I did actually have Gridley Star questions. I actually added those to the resources. You can add any kind of questions you want. Let me find my resources. There they are. But I have these 3 questions, and this one looks like the Fed activity that they were doing. So at this point, it might be a good point to go ahead and add that for your kids. So let me go back to the form, and I'm going to go with an image, but this time I'm going to get it from my Google Drive. And I'm going to go with my recent stuff. Since I've been all in that folder, it should be right there. I don't have to search for it, hopefully. We'll see when it comes up, right? And there it is. And there's the one I want. And so when I'm adding this question, excuse me, let me get rid of this. I'm sorry. When I'm, oopsie, there, my image. Okay, I'm sorry. I put the image in the wrong place. So I'm going to, this is just, I'm going to delete this. I'm going to go back to my question and choose this image. I apologize. And so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to double click so it adds right here. It'll add in this question. I don't even have to ask a question. I can put a number to it, but my choices are F, G, H, and J. So that way we're breaking up the PowerPoints, and then I'll add some more PowerPoints. So that's basically that section. So this is all from the Cornell Notes section. Now I go back to my guide that I have, just this one. And I noticed that I'm going to do an apply activity, which is also a further explain, which is an Edpuzzle. So every time I add a new activity, I'm going to add a section. So now we're moving on to the next section, which the next section is going to be just basically Edpuzzle activity. Now, this Edpuzzle activity was not in the district stuff, but, and you don't have to write apply explain. I'm just doing this for you guys. It wasn't in the district stuff. However, I went to LaShaka and Gina's thing over Edpuzzle, and I said, hey, that would be a good thing to add. So Edpuzzle's a really good resource that's easy to use. I have the link to that right here. So I'm just going to add some text so you guys can see what that looks like. And so I'm going to say in my text, click on the link below to access the Edpuzzle. Directions are very good for the kids when you're creating one of these, so that they know where they're going, because you're not going to be there with them. Please log in with your Google login, just so they know. And so with that, I'm going to go back to my resources because I have them all together, and I'm going to capture the Edpuzzle video link, and I'm going to put it in this Google form. Easy, breezy, beautiful. I used to say that to the kids, and they got cover girl. And so now I have 4 sections, which is almost a pretty good size lesson for these kids. It might actually take them a couple of days, but I want to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to go with my preview. Okay, everything's looking good so far. I got my questions. Go on to the next. That's why you don't add in your requireds till the end, so that your preview works. Okay, so there's some questions. Look how beautiful that looks. I have my slides. The kids have them there. They can access them to get their Cornell notes done. And then my final section and my Edpuzzle link did come up. Click on that, and it should take the kids to this Edpuzzle activity over balance and unbalanced forces, which is perfect. And when they log in with their Google account and you've already established a classroom through Google, you can see their grades. So that's another grading tool for you. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to it and I'm going to add my final section. And you're probably thinking, wow, this is a lot of work. But for 30 minutes, 45 minutes worth of work, you have a whole lesson set cycle for the kids. That's good that you can actually get data from. So I'm going to add my final section, and it's going to be my evaluate. And so I can add a question like the beginning question, which could be something like, how did the material reinforce your use of physics in everyday life? So I went back to my beginning question, and this one is definitely one that I'll do more than eyeball. This one I'll actually make sure I grade. Oops, let me capitalize that. I'm going to make sure I grade this one so that I know if the kids got it or not. And then I can also go ahead and add another question because it's an evaluate. So you want a good plethora of questions that you can ask the kids. So I'm going to go back to those early start questions that I had in my drive or whatever other questions I can find. There's like good tools out there that you can make questions with. And so I haven't used this one. So I'm going to add this one to it. And so it's going to be A, B. I could just add them all, C and D. And then I'm going to, so that I use all my materials that I put in there. You don't have to, but I'm just going to use all my materials. I'm going to go get the image and put the last one in there. And basically, I've made a whole lesson cycle all on a Google form that has checkpoints for the kiddos that I can utilize to secure a grade from, and also, gain an understanding of whether they're learning or not. It's different things, so it's engaging to the kids, and it's not just like a task they have to complete. So once you're done with that, hit the preview one more time to make sure it looks the way you want it to look, because this is probably your last preview unless you just do the preview at the very last. Okay. So far it's looking good, and I've created this in less than 30 minutes. So that's actually a very good thing. It hasn't been overwhelming for me to create. It helps when you're organized and you have all your materials. Now, here's where I do the settings on it. I save everything for the last, so I'm going to do my settings. Okay, so I want them to limit to one response. Sometimes I like when I collect their emails to make sure they're logging in with their Google credentials in case they're having problems. I don't want them to be able to edit after they submit. Okay, so I'm going to save that. I'm going to go back to that wheel, and I'm going to check on my presentation. I want them to see the progress bar so they know how far they have to go to get done, and because it is section based. And then, of course, I want my quizzes, the questions that I'm making as quizzes, I want to be able to get a grade from that. So I'm going to save that. So those are, I went ahead and set all my settings for this. Okay, so now I'm going to go through and count my actual questions that I can secure a grade from. This one, like I said, probably won't grade it one way or the other, so I'm not going to count that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So because I don't really want 6, 5's easier to divide out, I'm going to go ahead and just, I'm going to delete this last question because I'm just going to do the 5 questions for the kids. So now I'm going to begin at the top. And like I said, I don't hit my requireds till the end, till I know this is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to take this first one, turn on the required, because I want these questions to be required. I need the kids to answer all the questions on this form. So I'm going to turn on my requireds. On this one, I'm going to turn on the required, and I can put an answer key in there and add some answer feedback for the kiddos, which is good. That always helps, whether they get it wrong or not. I'm not going to make it worth any points because it's not going to grade whether they get it wrong, right or wrong anyways. So I'm going to turn on the answer key for that. I'm going to do the same thing for this one. Offer them some feedback if they get it wrong. That's what you can do. It'll be like, think of the FET activity. So that way they'll get the feedback. I can also add feedback as a link, or I can add it as a video. And of course, I'm going to keep the points to 0 because these short answer questions usually don't score anyway. This one, however, will score. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the answer key. I have 5 of them, so I know they're worth 20 points apiece. I definitely want it to be 100 points. So I'm going to add this, and this one's going to say unbalanced. Now you can weigh out the other ones when you're actually giving out the grade. It doesn't, there's no set, oh, you have to do it this way or you don't have to do it that way. I just do this because it makes it convenient for me. So, and it also, I can give more points if the kids get answers right, or like if they get a 60, then I can bump them up. So that way it helps the kids too. So here's the answer key to this one. I'm going to click on the answer, and I'm going to hit 20 points for that. And so then I'm going to turn on the required. I'm making sure I turn on the required. This one, the answer key, I can provide the feedback. So this time if they don't get it, I can like put the link to the FET in there. I can do whatever, keep the points at 0 and hit done. Now I'm going to do that with all of them so that when I get done, the kids can utilize this, and I can also get data from it. So as far as the slides and stuff go, you don't have to necessarily do that for the slides, but you do have to do it for all the questions. Hit the answer key if you wanted to do that way. Density's not the answer. Density's the answer. And then I put my 20 points up here. Sorry. I put my 20 points up here, and then I hit done. Make sure you hit done, turn on the requireds. So I'm going to go through and do that for everything. And basically that's it. I've literally built this. It's 4 sections. It has all the lesson components in it. It's probably going to take them more than a class period to do, but it's the whole lesson. And then you can get data that you can use on this. So at this point, here's actually some of the resources that we've created. I actually created an interactive form that's a sample. Okay, it's going to force you to make a copy. And then I have tips. And then if you forgot how to pull individual slides from a PowerPoint, I've also created a YouTube video for that. Some of the tips that I found out that helped me: don't make the questions required till the end, because that way you can preview it. Keep resources in one place. One activity set per section. So you don't want to start like do Cornell notes and then bring something else into that same section. You can use that in another section and mix it up so that the kids aren't doing a bunch of the same thing, and it's not a lot of writing. It's not a lot of typing. It's some fun activities you can do, quizzes, Quizlets, all those things that you can add in there. The kids can do it. And if you mix it up, it'll be fun for them and more engaging. And don't overwhelm the kids with too many tasks. I did 5 tasks in this, and I think that's a lot, but hey, I mean, they're able to do it. So at this point, we'll take questions. Let's try to get this off there. Any questions? Or has Ashley been handling those questions in the chat? Okay, she's done the links and everything. So that's pretty much our presentation. Thank you for attending. If you have any additional questions that you didn't get in the chat, you can either send them to me or Ashley. There's our information. And if you want this presentation, she has shared the presentation and the link. So thank you for sitting through this. I really appreciate you coming. And if there's no questions, then that's the end of it. Bye. Now I got to hit stop recording.